So imagine you are standing right in the middle of a crowded city.
Yeah, surrounded by just like thousands of people.
Right, exactly. Thousands of people all around you, but you still feel entirely, just crushingly alone. Whose fault is that?
Well, I mean, most of us would say it's circumstances, right?
Yeah, exactly. We point to bad luck or, the isolating nature of modern society, or just the fact that it's genuinely hard to find a community that truly gets us.
Oh, absolutely.
But there is this 2011 essay by an author named Feng, and it offers an answer to that exact question that might genuinely shock you.
It is definitely not what you'd expect.
No, not at all. So today we are unpacking this piece, and it's titled Expand the Space of Hope and Happiness. The mission for this deep dive is to, well, explore the author's deeply radical perspective on loneliness, despair, and, I guess, the invisible architecture of where we choose to place our hopes in life.
Yeah, it really digs into the foundation of how we build our lives.
It does.
Mm.
But before we get too deep into the weeds, I do want to make a quick note on the nature of this text. The author vigorously challenges, the most traditional, deeply ingrained views on marriage, the biological family, and how we raise children.
It really pulls no punches.
Right. So we are here strictly to impartially explore these concepts, just to understand the philosophy being presented. We're not endorsing it, we're just unpacking it. Whether you find the arguments illuminating or infuriating, engaging with a text, this provocative forces you to kind of interrogate your own relationships and maybe ask why you've structured your life the way you have.
And honestly, that is the immense value of reading something that completely abandons conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
The essay, it really doesn't try to coddle the reader at all. It starts by establishing a very stark, almost mechanical premise about human emotion. Basically, when hope is quenched, despair sets in, and joy just vanishes.
That's like a formula.
Exactly. The author treats hope not as this vague, fleeting feeling, but as a finite, structural resource. If you misallocate it, if you put it in the wrong place, the whole system crashes.
And to illustrate that systemic crash, the author presents 3 specific anecdotes about mothers. And I want to look at the progression of these stories because it feels like a deliberate dismantling of evolutionary biology.
Oh, for sure. He builds a very specific case here.
Right. So the first mother puts her entire life's hope into her only son.
Okay.
And then he tragically dies in a car accident. Her single vessel of hope is destroyed, and she falls into absolute despair. Which, on a purely human level, the empathy is immediate. The loss of an only child is an unimaginable reality.
It is entirely understandable. Evolutionarily speaking, we are hardwired to invest massive amounts of physical and emotional resources into our offspring, right?
Yeah, there are genetic continuation.
Exactly. But the author anticipates that the reader's instinct will be to blame the tragedy on the fact that she only had one child. Like it's just a numbers game. So he immediately counters with the second mother.
Right, the second story.
Yeah. She has 2 sons. One dies in infancy. So she survives the psychological blow by taking all the hope meant for 2 children and condensing it entirely onto the surviving son.
Which is a heavy burden for that kid, too.
Oh, immensely. But decades later, in her old age, that second son dies of an illness. And the result is identical ultimate despair.
Wow. But, someone could still argue that those first 2 mothers were just victims of terrible statistical bad luck.
Sure, people do argue that.
Like a proponent of traditional family structures might look at those stories and say, well, the solution is simply to have a larger family to hedge against that kind of tragedy.
Right, diversify the biological portfolio.
Exactly. But the author preempts that argument completely with the third mother. She raises 6 children. 6. She dedicates her entire life to nurturing this massive family unit. Yet when she reaches old age and actually needs support, not a single one of those 6 children is willing to take care of her.
Yeah, that one is brutal.
It is. And she falls into the exact same depths of despair as the first 2 mothers. Okay, let's unpack this. To synthesize this, it's like looking at a deeply flawed emotional investment portfolio.
I like that analogy.
These mothers put all their emotional capital into one specific asset class, their biological children. For the first 2 mothers, the market crashed due to tragic, unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
But for the third mother, the asset simply devalued and walked away. The mechanism of failure doesn't matter, right? The bankruptcy at the end is exactly the same.
What's fascinating here is how the author is isolating the variable to show us that the math simply does not matter. 1 child, 2 children, 6 children. The failure rate remains totally unacceptable to him.
The outcome is always risk.
Yes. He argues that the fundamental flaw is not the number of offspring, but the incredibly narrow scope of where the hope is placed to begin with. We are so conditioned by society to believe that biological replication is the ultimate safety net against dying alone.
Yeah, like having kids means you'll never be lonely.
Exactly. But this text frames that biological imperative as a really dangerous gamble.
Okay, so if the biological imperative is essentially a trap that inevitably risks profound despair, we have to ask what alternative the author proposes. And he pivots completely away from the nuclear family. He presents a totally different counterexample.
The European nun.
Yes, the European nun who moves to Africa. So the text describes her as constantly adopting orphans, moving around frequently, but always surrounded by something like 20 children. And the bold claim made here is that this nun never suffers from despair.
Never. The natural question is, well, how does she bypass the vulnerability that crushed those 3 biological mothers?
Right, she has kids too, so what's the difference?
The essay argues it comes down to the mechanics of her attachments. The nun's hope is not anchored to the biological survival or the reciprocal, lifelong loyalty of one specific child. Her focus is inherently expansive. If one of those orphans grows up and leaves, or if, a tragedy occurs, the underlying structure of her purpose remains intact. Because she is surrounded by others who still need her, her emotional well-being does not rely on a single point of failure.
Which brings us to, honestly, the most abrasive assertion in the entire text.
Yeah, this part is tough.
It really is. The author asks, who is responsible if you find yourself alone and friendless in a massive world? And his answer is that it is entirely caused by your own narrow-mindedness.
That is a very heavy phrase.
I really have to hit pause and push back on this framing. Telling a mother who is grieving the loss of a child, or an elderly parent who has just been abandoned, that their crushing isolation is their own fault, a product of being narrow-minded. Wait, isn't it a bit harsh?
Oh, it sounds incredibly harsh.
Yeah, it feels completely devoid of empathy. It sounds incredibly callous to someone in the trenches of real grief. So what does this all mean for someone genuinely struggling with loneliness?
On its face, it is an exceptionally harsh diagnostic. Absolutely. It completely removes any comforting blanket of victimhood or external validation for our pain.
It really does. No comfort at all.
But if we dig beneath the blunt delivery, the psychological architecture of his argument relies on shifting the locus of control.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does blaming the individual shift the locus of control in a helpful way?
Well, think about it like this. If your loneliness is purely a reality issue, meaning it is dictated by the external unchangeable facts that your child died or your family abandoned you, then you are rendered entirely helpless.
Right. There's nothing you can do.
Exactly. You're just a passive victim of a cruel universe. You cannot resurrect the dead, and you cannot force ungrateful children to suddenly experience empathy. You are trapped in the despair.
It's a dead end.
But by categorizing loneliness as a consciousness issue like a self-imposed limitation on who you are willing to love, the author is handing the controls back to the individual.
Oh, wow. Okay, so by defining the despair as self-inflicted, he is actually providing the blueprint to dismantle it.
Yes, precisely.
If the isolation is caused by my narrow focus on blood relatives, it means I have the power to consciously widen the lens.
Exactly. He is challenging the reader to recognize that treating only blood kin as family is a voluntary and ultimately limiting choice. I mean, we share a planet with billions of human beings.
Right.
If a person can successfully drop the arbitrary evolutionary boundary of genetic relation, they instantly gain access to an infinite pool of potential family members.
Yeah.
The nun in the anecdote doesn't share a drop of blood with those orphans, yet her consciousness is expanded to encompass them as true family.
But I mean, the mechanics of rewiring millions of years of evolutionary biology seems staggering.
Yeah.
How does a human being consciously trick their brain into prioritizing the collective over their own genetic offspring?
It's not easy, that's for sure.
No. And the author doesn't just stop at challenging the parent-child dynamic. He applies this same radical deconstruction to romantic partnerships. Here's where it gets really interesting. He refers to the very intention of getting married as a misdirection in thinking.
Yeah, it is a sweeping critique of the foundational building block of modern society. He argues that placing your ultimate happiness and life's hope onto one specific man or woman is basically a mathematical guarantee of eventual misery.
It's so pessimistic, but you see the logic.
Right, because if that single person betray you, falls out of love, or passes away, you lose everything.
Let's build a structural analogy here. It's like constructing this massive, intricate house and deciding to balance the entire weight of the roof on a single slender pillar.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
Right. You might spend decades decorating this house, accumulating memories, building a life, feeling perfectly secure under that roof. But the entire time, you are entirely reliant on that one structural support.
Just one pillar holding it all up.
Exactly. If that one pillar, your spouse, cracks under the immense pressure or, decides they want to walk away and hold up a different house, your structure doesn't just sag. It catastrophically collapses into dust.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is highlighting the sheer crushing weight we place on romantic partners. I mean, we expect a spouse to be our best friend, our financial co-pilot, our co-parent, our romantic lover, and our ultimate source of emotional validation.
It's exhausting just listing it all.
It really is. We ask one human being to fulfill every single relational need. From a purely structural standpoint, the author views this as a terrible engineering decision. It creates ultimate vulnerability.
And just to briefly reiterate our role here,
Yeah.
we're just unpacking the philosophical argument.
Right. Please don't go file for divorce based on this.
No, no. We are not advising anyone to abandon their romantic relationships. We are just examining the author's premise that exclusivity breeds extreme fragility. The tighter you grip one specific person, and the more you isolate your hope into that single vessel, well, the more thoroughly you are destroyed if the vessel breaks.
And because humans inherently need to place their hope somewhere, the text proposes an alternative destination. If we are to divest our ultimate hope from biological children and romantic spouses, where does the author suggest we invest it?
He points to concepts that are really broad, abstract, and unshakable.
Right.
He specifically lists 3 areas: trust in the greatest creator, the well-being of humanity as a whole, and the way towards paradise.
The strategic advantage of those concepts is their permanence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot outlive humanity. Humanity isn't going to get a new job in a different state and leave you behind.
Right.
A conceptual path toward paradise doesn't wake up one morning and decide it's no longer in love with you.
They are completely immune to human mortality and fickleness. If your foundational hope is tied to the betterment of the collective human race, there is never a shortage of work to do. There's never a lack of purpose to fulfill, and always someone who needs your love. Your purpose basically becomes bulletproof.
I mean, I understand the theoretical armor that provides, but I'm really struggling to see how that functions in the messy reality of day-to-day life.
How so?
Well, it's very easy to sit in a room and declare, I place my hope in the well-being of humanity. But humans crave tactile, immediate connection,
Yeah, we are social creatures.
We want someone to share a cup of coffee with on a Tuesday morning. We want someone to complain to when work is exhausting. Can a person genuinely survive on abstract conceptual hope without descending into a different kind of cold, detached isolation?
That's the real test, right? But the author clearly believes this expansive view can be practically applied, and he points to a real-world example to prove his concept.
Right, the community.
Yes. The essay concludes by highlighting a community he calls the second home, which the text notes evolved into the new Oasis for Life founded by Lifechanyuan.
He uses this community as the ultimate laboratory for his theories. The text claims that the people living in this second home never feel lonely, and they never experience desperation.
Which is a huge claim to make.
A massive claim. And the reason given is that they have successfully executed this expansion of consciousness. They have broadened their living space, their space of hope, and their definition of kin.
According to the description, the residents are continuously acquiring more family members and close friends, creating this ever-expanding web of connection. By the author's definition, this expansion makes loneliness structurally impossible.
So help me visualize the mechanics of this distributed emotional network. How does expanding the space of hope practically protect these people from the despair the 3 mothers felt? If we go back to our house analogy, instead of one massive pillar holding up the roof.
They are building a structure supported by 100 smaller pillars.
Okay, yeah, so the weight is distributed.
That is an accurate way to visualize it. They are refusing to concentrate their emotional survival on a nuclear family unit. Because of this diffusion of weight, they drastically dilute the risk of catastrophic loss.
That makes a lot of sense.
In a traditional setup, if your spouse leaves, 100% of your support structure vanishes. In the second home model, if one person leaves the community or tragically passes away, that loss might represent only a small fraction of your total emotional support system.
So it still hurts, but it doesn't break you.
Right. There is undeniably grief because they are human, but there is not the existential, life-shattering despair that those 3 biological mothers experienced. The community structure holds firm.
It's really the ultimate exercise in emotional diversification. They aren't trying to eradicate the pain of losing someone they care about. They are trying to eradicate the specific type of despair that occurs when your singular reason for existence is suddenly removed.
This brings us to a profound questioning of how society defines family. We are relentlessly conditioned by culture, media, and our own biology to believe that blood ties possess this inherent mystical strength that surpasses all other bonds.
Yeah, blood is thicker than water, all those sayings.
Exactly. But this essay argues that relying on genetic accidents or legal marriage certificates for ultimate security is deeply flawed. It posits that chosen family, a network built on a shared, expansive consciousness, is structurally far more resilient than the traditional nuclear model.
It really challenges you to take a hard inventory of the load-bearing walls in your own life. And that leads us to the core takeaways we want to leave you with from today's deep dive. We have explored the radical assertion that the profound, crushing loneliness so many people experience isn't simply a stroke of bad luck or failure of modern society.
Right.
According to Su Feng's essay, it is the direct result of hyper-focusing our emotional investments into a tiny, fragile circle, usually our biological children or a solitary romantic partner.
The proposed antidote is a deliberate and challenging shift in how we perceive our place in the world. It requires breaking out of our biological programming, dropping the narrow definition of family, and consciously adopting the broader world as our space of kin.
It's a huge mental shift.
It is. It's about trading the precarious depth of a single pillar for the unshakable stability of a vast network.
And we want to turn this directly over to you. Take a moment to analyze your own architecture of happiness. Where are you placing your ultimate hope? Are you relying entirely on one or two fragile pillars?
It's a scary thought experiment.
It really is. If your spouse, your best friend, or your child were suddenly removed from the equation tomorrow, would your entire reason for waking up completely collapse? Or have you done the work to expand your circle? Have you diversified your emotional investments into broader communities, deeper universal purposes, and wider definition of who you consider family?
It is a deeply uncomfortable inventory to take because it requires looking at our most cherished relationships through a lens of structural vulnerability. And as you consider your own emotional portfolio, there's one final lingering question to ponder.
Yeah.
The text advises us to detach our ultimate hope and happiness from our closest loved ones to shield ourselves from inevitable despair. But if you actually succeed in doing that, if you look at your spouse or your child and consciously decide to de-escalate their importance so they are no longer the center of your universe, does the fundamental nature of your love for them change?
Oh, that is such a good question.
Can you love someone with absolute fierce devotion while simultaneously refusing to make them the pillar that holds up your world?
That seems to be the ultimate psychological tightrope walk, doesn't it? Figuring out how to love deeply and completely without investing so much of yourself that your own survival is entirely dependent on someone else. Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We will see you next time.